You can read all about it, and there's plenty in your little brochure there. But all I wanted to say is, we are grateful to you, and you've taken this up, you've run with it. You are our lead tutor, our lead trainer. You've been heavily involved in coaching and training some of the others and bringing them up to a standard. You've also been instrumental in, I think, shaping and phasing the way that the manual is put together and helping us with that. We're appreciative of that. So I know you're quite passionate about driving up standards. So looking forward to hearing about that. And the floor is yours. Thank you, Ian.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Ladies, gentlemen, welcome. Sorry, I pressed the wrong thing. Okay. We get this to work. Which one is it? I'm moving up and down, sorry. Hang on. Yeah, nice. Okay. Last year I spoke at the conference in Amsterdam, which was, I think, quite widely and happily received. What we were facing last year as a result of the downturn, particularly in the oil and gas sector, was a shortage, in essence, of vessels to inspect. It wasn't that suddenly the vessels had disappeared, it was the fact that a high number were in layup. There still is a high number in layup. Those are some statistics as taken from April this year. The numbers are, fortunately, starting to very, very slowly come down. Speaking to a couple of people here today, they're already seeing elements of warm-up within the oil and gas sector. However, there are still other big sectors out there. The renewable sector, which we as a company work in today, is quite a buoyant market. And then certainly in my second presentation, I'll come on to that in greater detail. So when you look at the percentages of the vessels there, these are taken from various stats that we pulled together. There was an estimation of about 28% of the global offshore market was laid up into a cold stack situation. Maybe some people from IMPA may have better stats than me, but you can take that in the next presentation. Of that percentage, I still believe there will be a high percentage will probably never reactivate. Will go to scrap eventually because the market has changed. If you look at some of the big seismic providers, CGG, for one, who we were a master service provider to, went from 27 vessels down to 8. Still got 4 in layup. Western Geco, the second largest provider of seismic operations, no vessels left, completely gone out of the market, drifted away from it. So that there has been some major shift changes within this. But the table's turning. Oil hit, I think, $80 a barrel yesterday. We're still seeing at the present moment in time about 113 vessels laid up in the North Sea or Northern Hemisphere. I think probably a lot of them are in Peter's back garden, laid up in Norway. But it is improving. So there is certainly a light at the end of the tunnel. So we will hopefully now start to see, as the ABIs get more opportunity to inspect more and more vessels, that we might see that uplift, and I might be able to get to agree with Mike and say, yeah, there is maybe 700 of us out there. I'm still going to stick with 500, and I'll hold that for next year's conference as well. So improvement is there. Improvement in the market, pick up in the market, more vessels coming into it, so that should all be positive news for us all. It's something that we should really look to take away in a positive attitude. So it's been a busy year, as Mike has said earlier in the opening address. The number of people now has increased. We've had over 500 applications, 417, I believe, is the standing number of ABIs at present. The number of courses which have been run, and the number of delegates which have been put through, and also interestingly, in the numbers of courses done, there was still quite a high percentage of people who hadn't gone through the process. maybe with warm-ups in the industry, that we might start to see those people come through as well, which is certainly interesting. And I think one thing which is also quite interesting, and this is not me being rude by any stretch of the imagination, if you look around the room, what's the average age of everybody in here?
32.
Yes, I know you're 21, so before you stand up and tell us all that. Okay, I'm 52. How many people are older than me? John, you're twice as old. Okay, one of the things which I think we do have a challenge with going forward is bringing younger people into the industry. And this isn't just for doing vessel inspections, this is a global challenge in bringing young people into the marine industry. But how we do that, yeah, not sure. Apprenticeship schemes, quite difficult. Getting clients to accept training programs and bringing people on, getting people to pay for it, how is it funded, various challenges that we have. But this is something that we do have to think about, and people who have survey companies or inspection businesses as arms of their businesses, like we do as specialist marine consultants, we're thinking about how we bring in the next generation of people, how we can get them trained, how we can get them the knowledge to take this forward, because this is something which has to continue. Certainly when I'm dead and buried, I hope somebody else is stood up here and saying, yeah, we've now got Mike's Magic 700 and he'll be happy. So thinking about it for the future on how we can do this is something I want you to take away today, that's for sure. Okay, of the 31 courses, as I say that we've done 386 delegates, yeah, it's quite a number. And for the courses, how we've put them together, I was actually on the very, very first course, which was run in September 2015. Chris Baldwin ran the course. And it was interesting in the way it being put together. Unfortunately, I got rang up in about 2 weeks after that by Hillary and said, could I run a course in York? Just one, that's all we needed to do. We haven't got anyone to do it. And 3 years down the line, I think I've done about 12 or 14 or something like that. I can't actually remember. But what we've done is try and turn the course a little bit on its head. Anybody who's in the room who's been on a course which I have run, we try to make it as interactive as possible. We try to challenge people. We try to raise the standard, because the standard is the important thing here that we're really after. As Mike spoke about in his opening address, where it was an unregulated industry, we are now trying to give it some level of regulation, some level of credibility to hopefully up and raise that bar. And that's certainly something which is really important, not just to me, not just to you, to the whole industry, whether it's in oil and gas, dredging, renewables, anyone basically who's open to using a CMID or MISW inspection. It's important. And taking it further from that, doing any inspection. So if you're doing an on-hire survey and you've gone through an AVI process, you have something to say that you have been accredited as a vessel inspector. And that's an important thing. It can be used as that other step for personal development. So, question, have we raised the standard? Don't all speak at once. This is not one of my tutorials.
Yes.
Yes. Who thinks we've raised the standard? Show of hands. That's about less than 50% of the room. Why is that? Any of those who hasn't raised their hands want to answer that?
Well, we haven't valued proof.
We haven't
evaluated proof. So we only know what we've done.
Right, so you only know that you've done. So in essence, what you're saying is, had you not done this, you deem that your standard was high anyway.
No, what I'm saying is we only know what our standards, and our standards may have risen, but what we don't know is other people's standards, and whether the standards of others have either those people have dropped off and so they're not doing it, or they're doing it but we don't know their standard because we only look at ours.
Yes.
So only you, as a group who are running this, know whether the standards have gone up and down legally. And I'm assuming that's only by their application.
Yeah, everybody goes through an assessment process, and that's done to a standard, or as much as it can be played out as a standard, depending on what the application is for, whether it's for someone just wanting MISW or general, or going through the full scope of requisites. I think my answer to this is yes, the standard has been raised. There are a regulated community of inspectors out there now. However, has it been raised enough? No, it hasn't. And I still see quite a high number of completed EC MIDs, MISWs today that I would look at and think, if that's been done by one of our inspectors, it would have been thrown back at them. We wouldn't have accepted it. It would not have been sent to the client. I had a call myself a few weeks ago by a client, one of our big clients, who said, we've just chartered a vessel and we've been sent the EC MID. We don't think it's that good. Can you take a look at it and give us your opinion? It was quite easy to look at because there was basically nothing in it. So that was really easy. They didn't have to pay me much for that. I did that for free. Okay. Where there was a comment had to be added, it consisted of 1 or 2 words. Most of them were yes or no. Findings 2. So I got myself a job, not that I particularly wanted that one, but will you go and do it? Yes, okay, I went and did it. 26 observations. The vessel was in dry dock, so there were certain areas that we couldn't particularly get access to, which could have mitigated that there could have been more. And that was me being quite conservative over it. The number of words put into the CMID that I looked at, we counted, was a total of 322. The one I completed, and I'm not saying that this is something that everybody has to do whatsoever, this is just my document, I put another 8,000 in, plus pictures, plus everything else, because that is a sign of what I'm delivering to my client, because he or she who is reading it wants to know what they are really hiring, to know that the level of due diligence has been done correctly. And every inspection that we send out has been proofread, it's been questioned, it's been done. There's a number of people in here who have done inspections for us, Gert, John. And has that told me that we've raised the standard? No, it hasn't. I was quite disappointed when I saw it. And I'm still disappointed when I see ones where AVIs have done them. Why is that happening? That's the question. One of the things, I questioned one person who I'd seen who'd done not a brilliant inspection. And the answer I got back from that person was, well, the day rate was put. For me, the day rate is the day rate. How many people in here are independent companies? Okay, quite a high percentage. So you all have day rates which may be flexible depending on the type of client that you're working for. I'm not asking you how much you're doing or anything like that. But should that affect the standard of your inspection? No.
Exactly, and that was one thing. I think the standard is going up. I'm in the receiver end sometimes with jobs I have, and I can see the standard is definitely raising. But some people are going out, AVI, accredited, and doing stuff they're not accredited for. Therefore, of course, that will. And I've seen that some companies have called me, can you accept it? They don't say we have made it. Can you accept this one? For DP vessel, but we have found out the inspector is not accredited for DP. Seen several times and they ask. Another story is you said there was not many words in this report you're referring to. And at the last conference, and
Amsterdam. There were some of the owners, ship owners, and as I remind, they were saying as few words as possible and as few pictures as possible. That was what they were telling us in Amsterdam, and that was the owners. And from my own personal point, when I'm the receiver of this, to be honest, sometimes you can have a lot of words, but you don't look at them. You see the findings. Pictures are very good because they say everything, but a lot of words, yeah. If you are under pressure and you have to look at it here and now, take a decision, that's not something you do very quick. And if there's a lot of words, you don't read them. Sorry to say.
Yeah, that's your opinion on that. And I think there was one owner who actually said that, who, as far as I'm aware, doesn't actually subscribe to this scheme.
But again, I'm sitting for the owners and receiving and look at it and tell them that I'm an advisor on that part of it and saying, okay, we can use it. And a lot of the eCMA IDs come in and they will further make a in-hire survey or something. They're just the first part of it is the eCMA.
So what you're saying is you are happy with the tick box?
Not only the tick box, but I'm not happy if there's too many words. That will take too long to go through.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it was.
Yes, I agree with a lot of what that gentleman said. I think in terms of training and the way the industry is going, I mean, if you compare the training that's received for overhead inspectors, for example, that is very much, if the answer is yes or no, that's the answer. As in the question is, does the vessel have a planned maintenance system in place? If it has, the answer is yes. So you then have to ask, what else, what do you add to that then runs the risk of becoming subjective? And it's trying to keep the subjectivity out of the report. Now, that is the way that OCHIM for the OVID system is going. So if the eCMID system is different and you are actually encouraging people to be generous with the comments that go into the comments boxes, I think that's something that needs to be made very clear to the inspectors.
Yeah, I think I'm not an OVID inspector. Okay, I did the original course, never did an OVID, so I dropped out of it 3 years down the line. Okay, but if you look at the CMID has a main question with a set of subsections, which are also questions. Okay, I can't tell you what the OVID looks like as it does today in its present form, so I'm not even going to go into that or draw a comparison from it. What I do know is that yes, there is a high percentage of operators are using OVIDs over CMIDs, and that possibly has grown, and that's mainly driven by the clients who are hiring them. The big boys, the Exxons, the BPs, the Shells, the OCHIM members who are doing this. Okay. However, I'll speak from my own client base, and what they want to see is a quite factually based inspection. And that is what we're fulfilling. If somebody wants a tick box inspection, they can have a tick box inspection, but it won't be done by one of our inspectors. And we do present with just short of 100 inspections, I think, this year. Not all CMIDs, it's a range of different ones.
When you say we, Ian, who are you referring to?
Our company.
Which is? Specialist
Marine Consultants.
Okay.
Okay, we've got 18 inspectors on our books, minus me. Plus me. So we do a range of different types of inspections, and all ones normally have a level of context in there because it's client driven. That's what the client is asking for. If your clients are asking for tick box and just saying yes, no, that's down to you. But at the end of the day, what we got sent and what the client passed on to us in this particular response was they were not happy with it because it didn't tell them what they needed. It gave them a suspicion which was correctly put to bed, because when I did the inspection, I had the client with me the entire time, and he validated what was basically found, and again was not happy with what had been sent. Now, is it right? Is it wrong? You know, this is an open opinion.
That's exactly the thing, because you do have some clients that would have been more than happy. I think the situation like that, the protocol should be that the client goes back to the inspector with their comments before it comes to you. Allow the inspector, who might be thinking that the tick box yes, no is acceptable. If it's a clear black and white yes or no answer that does not need any further information in the box, or so the inspector thinks so, then let them respond on that basis before it comes to you.
Yeah, and that would normally go within your scope of work of what you expected. And who, if you know what your client's requirements are. This is an individual thing. What I'm not going to promote here and turn around and say is that you're turning the CMID into a tick box.
I don't say you're wrong, but I'm saying now we're talking in our direction. I think it's not a tick box where you say yes or no in everyone, but some of them is correct. When you don't need a comment in everyone. There's some people put a comment in everything, and it could be a nightmare to read it. Yeah, that's look good and whatever, and something of it is only put in to write something, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think
I can agree. It needs to be factual,
yeah,
what you're placing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I was thinking if it's just factual, good, then words are okay. But again, if you just can check it, it's not how many comments you write, there should be the good report of the back and forth.
I think one thing which is going to be interesting today, I'm looking forward to certainly hearing Mark's presentation, because I do think the version 11, when we hopefully get to see the new question sets as they come out, there is some work to be done. I think that personally the document is too large. It could be stripped out. I know you're talking about removing the crew qualifications, which I think is a very good thing. I think there's a number of areas it can be reduced in, because at the end of the day, one of the questions I always ask when I deliver the course is, how long does it take to do an ECMID? And I'll always reference and say, imagine you're doing a vessel, DP vessel, with one additional supplement on top of that as well. So it might have a heli deck, might have ROV, whichever. And you get a range of times from 8 hours to 2 days. You know, that's what it comes down to. A lot of the vessels, certainly that we do as a company, we have a day to do the inspection. So I'm basing it on roughly about 12 hours. So the document doesn't want to be increased, in my opinion. It needs to be decreased to actually give you more time going around the vessel, because you can, as we all know, get locked up in paperwork and then end up having a very small amount of time to physically get around the vessel, which is one of the most important things. When I saw that we were going to have potentially GDPR and cybersecurity added to it, and I'm, as I say, going to be interested to see what Mark has to say on this. Do I agree with that? I don't know. I want to see what the questions are. What do I know about cybersecurity? Not a great deal. What do I know about GDPR? I'm sick of clicking yes buttons on various things like I get sent on emails to agree to. So how do I inspect that? Not sure, is my honest opinion, because I don't know what it's going to be asking for. But what I do think is that some of the repetition does need to be taken out of the document. I think it needs to be made more user-friendly. And probably for those who are pushed on time constraints, which is being driven by our clients, saying that actually we only want to pay you for 2 days to travel, do the inspection and do the write-up, or 3 days or whatever, that it gives you sufficient time to produce a quality document. Because I do think there is a level of commercial pressure being put onto a lot of inspectors to deliver something what they were probably getting paid at least a third for pre-2014. I know we are as a company. I was discussing it with Peter this morning, and for what we've had to drop and to how the terms and conditions have changed has had certainly an effect on the inspectors themselves. We've maintained the quality, but we've had a hell of a lot of grumblings to sort out with the people who work for us. And you know, is that good? Is it bad? It's certainly not building towards a higher standard. But going back to this, I think, yes, the standard has been raised, but I still think we have a long way to go. And I think that's down to us as individuals, how we do it. Going back to Steve's question, how is it being perceived by the industry right the way throughout? we'd have to really ask the industry for that. I think that's something that we can possibly pass back to IMCA to get their feedback from their members to say, what is the industry really thinking about it? I would even throw it back to IMCA and say, how many of their members who are vessel operators, vessel owners, charterers, are totally using the system as well? I know that's not something that Mark can force on everybody or anything else. I'm sure we'd love to do. But it is something that would be nice to see the statistics of and to see how that is being promoted, because if the CMID starts to lose out dramatically to OBID, that's not a good thing. Yeah.
I fully agree with you. I can see, as a small company, doing approximately 20 CMIDs this year alone. And I can see that the standard has improved, the quality has improved. I can also see that some oil majors have gone CMID-wise instead of OBID-wise because I experienced it. So I can see it, and I definitely see, yes, you can have the tick box, yes or no, but I see repeatedly again that that is not the way that my clients at least want it. I fully follow you, Ian, in this way. We still have a way to go, definitely also within eCMID or IMCA itself in the way of the format and inspectors, etc. But I can see a definitely increase since approximately mid last year, where we were in that transition phase, and definitely from 1st of January, where we have the full accreditation phase. Absolutely.
Good. That's good.
Ask a question. Something I'm not sure.
Yes.
Relatively recent inspectors. So, to what extent, if any, are the reports that we upload audited?
That's an easy one for me to say. They're not.
They're not.
Yeah. Not by me. I've got nothing to do with that whatsoever.
Goes to the client.
Basically, from the upload, when you upload it as an inspector, it goes to the vessel operator or the vessel owner, whoever that may be. They are the owner of the documents. So if you're being paid by the client, say I'm your client and I'm hiring Peter's vessel, okay, you upload it, it goes to Peter.
Okay, I understand that. Slightly unrelated question, but
yeah.
I'm not sure if this is the right moment to answer it. But as I understand it, the CMID inspection and report is a snapshot of what you see
on the day.
That inspection. It's not there's not a follow-up process. So in other words, if we've listed a number of issues that need to be attended to, it's not our job to follow those up and amend the report. I don't think we can amend the report.
No, it's a good question because it comes up in quite a number of the courses that I've run. Probably every course somebody asks that question. That is another piece of work. At the end of the day, doing the CMID or the MISW is one piece of work. If you're re-engaged by your client to go and do a follow-up and a closeout, that's another piece of work, which is realistically, apart from looking at the observations that you may have raised, has nothing else to do with the CMID. You can't go back in and alter the document. The only thing you could do is then rerun a new CMID if they had, for my sake, a long list of inspections. They wanted that to look pretty on the website, then you would go and re-inspect it. But that's it. But it's a separate piece of work.
I think what we have seen, is with follow-up inspections, that's obviously between the vessel operator, the client, and the inspector.
Yeah.
So, say the inspector is instructed to do a follow-up, his closeouts can then obviously are passed on to the client. The vessel operator can access that CMID and put the closeout comments in from the inspector at any time, because that CMID report is live for its entire life as far as the vessel operator is concerned. So there is some sort of facility there for.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Mark. Yeah, that's a very true point. In that the operator can facilitate that part of it. But again, going back to the original question, it is a separate piece there. And I think if you're going back to do closeouts as well, it's what's acceptable as a closeout, because if the person who is hiring you is putting that onto you, then you also need to know what is the standard of the closeout that they want to see as well. A lot of the time it may be done by their own compliance people, HSE people who are doing follow-up. But so it's a very important part, because I always reference, and it's also when I'm speaking to clients, is that if we can do a vessel inspection, the inspection is really only as good as the follow-up that is done after it, should there be a number of findings raised. Because if those findings are just left to float around, then how do you know that due diligence has really been followed up and that those things have been addressed, closed out, particularly if they are high potential points which may have been raised there. Okay, just the last point there on the slide, a paper version's still being used. So I'll put your hands up.
Unfortunately, we see them still. It's true.
I'm not going to disagree with you. You know, there is a number of people we work for today who request a paper version. We had issues. We tried to drive people towards the ECMID when it was first ramping up. As Mark knows, there was issues, technical issues, and that was one of the things which put some people off, because we would get a call 10 to 5 on a Friday night. Can you come and do an inspection? Yeah, is your vessel registered? No. Okay, you first of all have to register and do this. Yeah, but we want the vessel doing on Sunday. And it becomes very difficult. So one thing which we have done in the past, we've gone and run a paper inspection, and then it's been uploaded once they've got it registered and everything done in that manner. However, there is, I'm going to come to you in a second, however, there is still a high percentage of operators who feel that if they are paying for the inspection, they own the inspection. And whether they're the vessel operator or not, that is their perception, that is their view. And I can't change that. If I turn around and say, no, we're not going to do it, then they'll come to somebody who will say yes. And it's a very, very difficult one. I know Mark has very strong feelings on it and everything that goes behind it, but it is something that I think will be discussed and will be rumbling on. But it is something that this is coming from industry. I don't think it's coming from the ABIs. This is an industry-led thing, and it's going to take time to get that to filter through. Good.
Yeah, I follow you there, but there's 2 points in that, because I just did an inspection again here during some national holidays where the vessel was not registered, and that should be easily fairly to overcome electronically, because if we could download a blank form,
yeah,
and then whenever the operator has registered the vessel, fill that in after, before uploading the report. That's just an IT issue. That should be fairly easy to download a blank form in order not to hold up and go back to the so-called paper version. The other thing which you were mentioning, which I face significantly in my inspections, and why I unfortunately sometimes do not ECMIDs but other so-called marine forums documents, is because, as you mentioned, the client, call them renewable industry, call them oil majors, whatever, who pays for that so-called inspection as they did before the ECMID was done, is owning or would like to have a report which could be done, printed out or done in a PDF format, but they would like to see it without the draft on. So as an example, and I was thinking about that coming up later, but let's bring it on now. So it's if when the report is uploaded to the operator of the vessel for their approval, it could be a potential that we as a surveyor or inspector could print out a PDF format where the draft is not mentioned, but where it may say that operator's response or some whatever, because they can comment on some of the potential findings.
Yeah, you're talking about removing the watermark.
Exactly, because then you could also, as we did before, when it was a documented, paper documented, we could print it out, we could send it as a PDF format or whatever they like to our so-called clients, which is not necessarily the operator of the vessel.
Yeah, I think that's one probably for the next presentation. for
exactly, but
Max.
I face exactly what you're facing.
I agree, yeah, and I think there's probably a percentage of people in the room are also facing that. And at the end of the day, what will happen with it is it can go out to the non-ABI who will deliver the paper version, which we then take a step back to where you were pre-2015. And that's not what any of us want to see.
Or they develop their own inspection format, which I think is a wrong way of going.
But that's becoming quite prolific, as you know, as I know. So,
and strangely enough, a lot of them look like a CMID.
a lot of the questions look like from the CMID. Yeah.
Yeah, version 10.
Yeah. There we go. It's one to ponder. Okay, so what does the industry think? I'm going to do the time, Mike. 5 minutes. Right, okay, I'll whip through this. Is that picking up your 15 minutes as well? Bloody hell. Okay, so what does the industry think? I will say that a lot of the industry, from my perspective, I might sound like I'm contradicting myself. Yes, they do feel that there is a higher standard of inspector coming out there. Certainly from the feedback what I've had, they're happy to see that people have gone through some level of accreditation. Standardization, going back to what Steve said, it is a difficult one, and when we do the course, it's also quite difficult. You know, you've got a day, you're not going to standardize everybody in a day. Come on, let's be real about it. We all look at things with different eyes. You know, we all have specialisms. I'm going to pick on Peter. I know Peter's specialism is DP, okay? So I know that if he's doing a vessel with DP, he's going to really go into that, as he will with everything else, but that's one of his special areas. One of mine is lifting, and they've done and removed heavy lifting. I was proud of that. So I want a special card next year, Hillary, okay? So to get standardization is quite difficult because we do all look at various things. If there's a high percentage of people in here are ex-masters, chief officers have come from the deck side, there is not as many engineers in it. There's one or two people who've got dual certification, but if you come across CMID inspectors who have been chief engineers, Matt will probably challenge me on this because I know he was a chief engineer, then their focus, and I think it's quite interesting, is always much more technical towards the technical aspects of the vessel. I did an inspection some years ago with the chief engineer down in Australia, and it was quite a learning curve for me. The time it spent, we did an operational once. I was at sea for about a week on this particular vessel, and this guy spent about 2 days completing section 15 in the machinery space. You know, but it was brilliant. I learned a lot from it, you know, because we're learning something every day. None of us are experts. We might think we are. I certainly don't. However, we have to be continually learning. We've got to be keeping ourselves up with the standards. Legislation is changing. How do we do that? We have to do it to the best of our ability. And that's all we can ask. So, report writing, keep it factual. No, not what Ian thinks that you should do this. No, Ian doesn't think that. He's reporting on what he actually sees or what he actually hears. And that's a really important thing. I think the industry, in terms of turnaround, and this kind of goes a little bit to what Gert was saying there, is pre the electronic days, turnaround to the end client who was paying for it could be done pretty quick. We had a deadline, basically, from completion of the inspection, the final report would be with the client no later than 4 days after. That accounted for travel. If we were traveling from somewhere, far-flung land, wherever, we could get it turned around in that. You can still get the list of observations to them. You can still print off a draft with a watermark and get that to them. But the actual final document can be held up with a vessel operator, and that's something for the vessel operator and the charterer, client, whoever you want to call them, to deal with. That's their problem to really sort out. Okay, the time taken to inspect a vessel, that's coming again back to what Mark is going to hopefully talk about, is can the question sets be possibly more compressed? Certainly taking the crewing element out of it, that's a big chunk. Okay, I think we can probably all agree that's about an hour's work. I know some people might just print off a matrix and stick that in the thing. Is that done an inspection of the crew? No, it hasn't. You know, 90% of inspections that we do as a business are done on crew change days. It's a question I always ask when we are doing the training, is which crew do you reference? The off-signing crew or the on-signing crew? Agency crew, there for one trip. You know, it's a good point. So I think that's a really positive move. Introduction of the fee. That's all I'm going to say. A fee, we know more or less was going to come into it at some stage of the game. How it's been received by the industry is quite mixed from my personal view. And I know you all have personal views around that. The one thing I would say, had there been a fee from day one, nobody would have coughed and spluttered if you'd put the price up by 50%. But we can all say, you know, we should have filled in the correct 6 numbers on the lottery and none of them would have been here today. So in hindsight, yes, it's a wonderful thing. We have to deal with that, and that's, again, probably a discussion point as well. But the ownership of the document, certainly for a number of clients who are not vessel operators or vessel owners, is a sticking point, because they feel that we're paying X amount to have an inspection done. It's our document. Why is it theirs? Again, that's something I think for further discussion.
I don't think it's about who owns the document. It's just like before the ECME days. So I don't think it's about who owns the document, because the document is more or less a public thing anyway after it's uploaded. As long as it's circulated by the operator, by the vessel operator, well, anyone could get hold of it then, because then the draft issue is gone. But in a way of that, it's just like when we upload a report, if that draft section is gone afterwards, whether they have this live document, as Mark was saying, they can respond to whatever findings constantly, blah, 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 that doesn't really matter, because as you said, sometimes the charter is standing there and saying, listen, I want to see the report before I let it into my park, or I want to have the report before I charter the vessel. So, and that could be done, as you said, pretty fast. We did it pretty fast before the ECME.
I think the second point there is one which we've come across. We want to see the report before we charter the vessel, because if the report is quite negative, they may not charter.
Exactly.
And that is
they want to close out.
Yeah, it's a very valid point. Okay,
Yeah,
can I just continue with these, and then we'll take the final questions at the end of this presentation, which is only a couple of slides. That's all. If that's okay. Otherwise, Mike will get very annoyed with me and won't let me do my second presentation, which would be a real great shame. So, what does the future look like? The image here I took when I was down in China just before Christmas in Fuzhou. It's the Fuzhou National Yard. All the vessels there in the image are all brand new, ready to go, never delivered. 38 vessels actually in the yard, all completed, never delivered. Ironically, I saw a press release a couple of days ago that 5 of the vessels had just been bought by new owner for, I think, the price of 1. So anybody wants a cheap vessel, get yourself down to Fuzhou. I know a man who you can speak to. He'll take 10%. Okay, but there's a lot of that. There's over 200 in China, which are in various stages of completion, about 50 in Korea. Other parts of the world I can't say, but I was really quite shocked at the yard, especially when they're in company livery, all marked up. You know, it was quite sad to see. But the future is vessels are now coming out of stack, certainly coming out of warm stack. Reactivation is taking place. I'm looking forward to the presentation on reactivation. Some of the part builds are now being taken over as well. I saw that I think some semi-sub drilling rigs have just been taken over, which are in part build in Singapore, again, which are going to come back into the market. If they come back into the market, they need more supply vessels. more well intervention vessels, all vessels which will need inspections doing on them at some place. Hopefully those inspections will be CMIDs, not OVIDs. Okay. Increased requirements in the renewable sector. It's a vast growth area. My next presentation focuses on that area, so I won't dwell on that, but it is a focus area where there are certainly some very good opportunities. So if we see an increase in vessel rates, which the vessel operators want, because they want to reactivate, they're not going to flood the market and kill the rate straight away. Would be suicidal. Liquidity is very low with vessel operators. So if the rates can increase, it should increase more inspections. It might even increase our day rates again. So, any questions? I hope I haven't bored you all to death.
Yes,
so,
hi Ian.
I did, okay.
If I can go back to the 2 slides from that, please. That's the one. What does the industry think? Question mark. Okay, appreciate this is your presentation. Every question there has a question mark after it, which my perception of your presentation was that that's your answers was your opinion about what's going on in the industry. But I think some of these things, like higher standard,
I'm just drawing you away from me.
The higher standard of inspector, etc., is something that perhaps I would like to divert to the IIMS and ask if they're actually canvassing the industry to get responses from the main clients that are using the ECMID and feeding that feedback back into to the questionnaires, the training, and everything else. You know, if I may say, I've kind of been, as have many people in this room, around the CMID community for many years. And we saw the collapse of it back in 2010-11, and it's by the skin of the teeth, it's still going. And some would argue that in 2007 and 8, there was a poor standard of subjective. Some would argue that the lack of listening to the industry in general caused the other organisation to forge ahead with their decision to create an industry document. So my concern here is that ECMID should cement itself firmly in the future, and it looks like the future for ECMID is probably more in renewables, although it would be good to see if we can still see that hang on in there with the oil and gas, and be able and make sure that it doesn't fall foul of the wind, the renewables sector going and doing their own thing. So that's basically where I was going from with this, about getting the feedback and processing it in a continuous improvement type model.
I think some good points. I don't think the future is just within renewables whatsoever. I think as the oil and gas sector picks back up, I think it will increase its leverage within that. I have no doubt whatsoever within it. I think it will take time. It's not going to be an overnight success, but I think within probably this time next year, we will be able to stand here and say, yes, there has been a marginal increase, but hopefully providing that the oil prices stay reasonable and stay around the $80 market, where if they stay there towards the end of the year when budgets are reset, we will see some big chunks that start to follow through. So 2 years from now, I think we would be aiming to probably back where we were round about towards the end of 14, not the start of 14. Start of 14 was still pretty busy before everything fell to pieces in that sector. So I do feel that oil and gas will have a major influx into this, because although OVIDs are being used and other types of inspections are being used, there is still quite a passion within the industry for the CMIDs to be used, particularly by operators who are doing their own level of diligence within it.
Can I add something? Like,
yep.
I do sometimes review the CMID report for my client, and I've seen some tendency like if the inspection, the client and the ship owner is sent, the report looks like the few observation, and it is a very simple report, see? But when there's a client is somebody, like client is Dong Energy, and the ship owner is different, then I see it more like there are a lot of observations, a lot of findings, like good comments. So there's a tendency, like this is, I think, one of the problem with the CMID, or CIMIT, that if I'm a ship owner, I'm the client, I'm the ship owner, I can choose my inspector, you see. So there's an integrity issue here, you see.
So,
like I'm talking about the standard of inspection, you see. It depends on how it is structured, you see.
yeah, that's kind of going back to the questions which Gert and Johan asked earlier. What is the level of the inspection they require? Do they want a contextual, factual, or are they after a lesser factual inspection? I think, is that what you're aiming at there?
Yes, because the ship owner is the client and he is the appointee of inspector, and I'm doing inspection. Everything is the same person, like same company.
Yeah.
Client and ship owner. Then there's an issue here, you see.
Yeah, it's that I think that comes down to your impartiality. I think some people feel if you have a contract with a ship owner who has, for my sake, 20 ships, okay, I'm just picking a figure out of the wood here, and you've got that contract, that's a nice lucrative contract, okay? So some people may not be as objective as they should be.
Yeah.
We have a rule of thumb within our business that nobody inspects the same vessel twice concurrently. So if I inspect it this year and the same request comes in next year, it'll be someone else goes and do it. And the following year, it would be somebody else if that's possible. There has to be a gap of that. And everybody should be independent. The inspection must be, not should be, must be a true reflection, not a commercial pressurized reflection to say that this vessel is all singing and dancing, because that is what happened with the last inspection that I did myself. It was an all singing or dancing inspection. When we got there, it wasn't an all singing and dancing vessel. And it was the client who drove that through because they were hiring it. You know, 130,000 a day. Yeah, he wants to be right.
Good. Last question. There's lots of hands up, but can you make them very quick questions? Otherwise, there's no copyright. Start with Gert.
I think just to follow up on the final point here, I have some significant clients, but it all comes back to the inspector. If you can tell your client whether you are doing significantly works for them or not, this is an impartial inspection, sorry my man, then they will most of the time respect you. But actually coming back to the semi-Ovid thing, one of the things I see with oil majors, European oil majors, which I start to do CIMITs for after the e-CIMIT comes, instead of Ovids, is simply because a lot of the OCIMF use their own accredited internal inspectors. That trend has started to go, at least from the oil majors I do CIMITs for now, because I'm not Ovid accredited anymore. I was. But the crisis came and then they used their own internal, which is on their payroll.
Yeah.
But I can see definitely a trend for the CIMIT again coming back into the oil industry, not only renewal, due to having an impartial third-party inspection.
That's the key word, it's being impartial. Yeah. I'm on overtime now, that's where it's gone up.
You are David, you're not on overtime.
Thank you. My name is Xavier de Mulder and I'm from Extra Market, my own consultancy company, freelance surveyor. Just a quick one. I think we've been talking a lot about the quality and the standards, and they have definitely raised. That is for sure. Like you said, there is a process to go, so we still have to go forward. There's still a lot to do. But just to standardize and to put up a benchmark, how about we briefly touched upon it, auditing, the third-party audit of the system. That is something I think which would help and would already answer a lot of questions which have been put here. So I know maybe it's probably coming up one day, but the sooner the better, and it will take out the flaws and it will improve the system. That was not a question, just a statement.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Reverting to this, what you said, just when you come back to the vessel, checking what was closed out or not. Now, the difference between OVID and ECMI. OVID, the client or major, Chevron, BP, Total, whoever, they doing the verification, they doing the checkout. Who will do it with ECMID? Because otherwise, your remarks will stay without action.
Well, no, you see, it would still then fall back to the vessel operator.
Yeah, but he has to come back with some action plan. Is there any?
But that's.
Is there any?
From our point of view as an inspector, that's, without being dismissive, that's not our problem.
Yeah,
What we have done, we have done the inspection on the vessel. You have raised observations, should there be any observations there, so you have done your job. How that closeout is done, if it's done, is another piece of work. Whether that falls to you in a separate contract as an inspector,
but in
is
yours. You see the way they close out, because the report is coming back to you with the comments, to your comments.
Yeah, but that's a separate inspection format. So let's not get lost in translation here. They are separate pieces of work, in my view. You know.
Yeah, but sometimes you come back to the same vessel, sometimes not.
If you go back to,
I'm coming back to the same vessels for the last 3 years, but same ID. I was registered in 2010. First inspection I did this year, February. So, see. And I have to read the report, the previous report, before even I start the inspection. What the remarks were raised up.
Well, what you're looking for there to see is if those points have been closed,
yes,
or addressed, or how they're rejected, whatever it is. That's one of your first parts of your job of your inspection. So if there's if it's all open, then you have to go and check to see if those points have been closed or not. Yeah. You know, does the vessel have a remedial action plan? They may do it in a different way. I don't know, but that's a separate piece of work. The piece of work that it is for when you do the inspection is it's specifically around that question. That's all. Okay.
Ian, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.